Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2022 horror film Hex. And before I go any further sharing my thoughts on this film, I want to give a special shout out to Daniel for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to my PayPal. The link will be in the video description down below, and I'll try to get to it as soon as I possibly can. Now, Hex is a prime example of how having an original concept isn't an automatic slam dunk when it comes to a a film. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're always going to stick the landing, because the concept of this film is fairly unique. It's centered around a cursed skydive, but there is a reason why a lot of these unique original concepts don't wind up in films, because not every unique concept is unique for a good reason. And what I mean by that is you can have something be unique and different, but be dumb and be not really something that warrants a feature film. And Hex is one of those things. I give the writers some credit for at least trying to do something different, but what this film is a confused, muddled, just mid-air plane collision. It's just an absolute disaster of a movie, and a lot of it stems down to the concept, which isn't rich enough, isn't deep enough, isn't interesting enough, or compelling enough for a feature film. It's barely compelling enough for a short film. Now, it's directed by Chris Johnston and Andy Malchiodi, and Andy Malchiodi never directed anything until this movie. Chris Johnston is in the same boat. He worked a lot as a sound engineer. He worked on the sound for films like Hero Dreams of Sushi, which is a really great documentary, and a hell of a lot better than this movie, but didn't direct anything. And you can kind of tell. You really can. There's a lot of shots in this that are very static, very stiff, very stodgy looking. They don't really have a lot of unique camera movement or techniques that are on display. There are a few shots, though, that actually look pretty decent. But there's no consistency. I would say the best looking shots are probably the skydiving scenes that were shot with a GoPro. At least that's what it looks like. And they were shot well enough. I mean, they didn't do it behind a green screen. I'll give them credit for that too. I mean, the skydiving scenes are done for real. Real people doing real stunts, which admittedly is something that's nice to see in today's day and age. But that doesn't mean that I would say this direction is anything really that special or noteworthy. At best, it's average. At worst, it is below that. But to me, the writing is this film's biggest flaw. I mean, the writing by Hans Rodinoff, it's bad. It's a bad script. First off, you have a dumb idea with a cursed skydive that goes nowhere from the very beginning. And you make matters worse by having no real drive behind anything. Like, the stakes feel incredibly low despite the fact that people's lives are at risk, because if they perform the hex, the skydiving move, the cursed skydiving move, that might lead to all of the people who did the move dying in the future. But because there's no real stakes leading up to that, you don't really care whether or not they perform the hex. And I think it's a simple fix. Instead of this group of skydivers getting together and just deciding to do this risky maneuver that barely anyone has ever completed just for shits and giggles, have them do it because they're training for a competition. They're training for the next skydiving competition. And if they can master this move, then that might mean that they could win the competition. Now you have some stakes. Now you have a reason for them to do this trick other than for fun and for the thrill of it. And it's just an easy thing. You could have just thrown that in there with a line of dialogue and then have them train. And that's why they need this other new member to add to the group, which winds up being the lead girl, Sarah. So just have her be added to the group because they need an extra person to be able to perform this maneuver in order for them to win the competition. They've come close for the past few years, but they never have gotten over the hump. And if they could just complete this maneuver, then they'll win it. And you could show the competition itself at one point in the movie. It's a low budget film, but clearly the producers and the people behind this had a lot of access to people who were skydivers. So just have other skydivers that you could find locally and, let them know they could be in a movie, or just use stock footage. That's fine, because that's all you really need is just footage of people doing skydive routines. And you have them do the hex. You still have the same setup where they try to do it for the first time and fail, and then you have them do the hex during the competition, and they complete the maneuver, and then one of their own disappears, and then it turns into this mystery about where did the guy go and what is going on, and then they try to figure out why the hex is cursed, and then you have people in the crew get knocked off one by one, like Final Destination style, in various different gory ways, and then it leads to the lead girl having to do some kind of crazy high altitude skydive without the altimeter or whatever in order to get out of the hex, and then end of movie. Like, it wasn't that hard. I think even if you did that, the film probably still would have had a high probability of sucking because the concept is so limiting. But if you had that extra drive when it comes to the narrative, that would make it less boring, because there's no real reason to care whether or not they complete the hex to begin with. So that's an issue. And I will give the writer some credit for some things. Not just for trying to do something different, but also for some of the dialogue. Some of the dialogue's kind of fun. Some of the one-liners made me chuckle. And I think there is some potential with some characters. Like, I like the Wade character, for instance. I thought that guy... I thought he had a fair amount of funny lines and seemed to be a more interesting character than Payson, for instance, or anyone else in the cast, including the lead girl. And I've definitely felt the film kind of came alive at times when you had Sarah and Wade together. So I would get those two together even earlier, and I would have them be pretty much the main duo that are working through the film. Maybe have them both do the skydive at the end and have them both survive and undo the curse. And you could have the whole stuff where they get on a plane and the guy who initially set up the hex, he's on there along with Payson trying to stop them, and then they find a way to, toss the bad guys off the plane or kill them or crash the plane and then get out and survive. Because it's not like this needed a sequel. It's fine with it just being a standalone story. And I think that it definitely would have helped the film in terms of just making things more streamlined. Because as it is, it's too janky. It's too shaky of a script. Because there's no impetus behind why they need to do the hex other than just to show that they can do it. And then after that, there's just a really painfully, poorly executed mystery, because you know that the old guy with the ponytail and the beard who's acting creepy at the bar, you know that he's going to have something to do with it. And it's not a shock or a surprise at all that he ultimately is the guy who did the first hex. And you have a lot of confusing stuff with this script involving Payson and how his character, he disappeared during the maneuver, but now he's showing up as like a ghost with blood all over his face, and every time he shows up people die, and you're like, okay, all right, why is this happening? And if you get behind that, then it just makes even less sense, because then you get to the end of the movie and there's some twist that he's still alive, or they did this overly complicated nonsense involving how everyone who was able to do the hex actually didn't do the hex, and they were on a plane and they were crashing and the plane was on fire and they were all dead already, and you're like, what? So you're just like, what the fuck? So there's just a lot of just needlessly confusing and overly convoluted storytelling with this script in an attempt to try to be more unique and more clever, but all it did is just make things more confusing. And you had the predictable twist at the end where, oh, the bad guys, they win and they get extra lives, because that's the whole point of doing the hex to begin with. Is the old guy made a deal with the Sky Devil. Not making this up, Chris. So Chris makes a deal with the Sky Devil, and if he performed the maneuver, he gets extra lives, and he also gets the abilities of the skydivers, like the Monstars from Space Jam. And I guess he's connected with or friends with Payson, or he's Payson's father. I really don't know for sure, because I don't remember that ever being clarified. I just know that Payson is tied to this guy, Chris. And so if I then it just makes things more irritating and confusing when you think about it, because okay, they did the hex, or did they? Because that is kind of one of those things where I'm like, how did they like crash in the plane if they did the hex? Did they not do the hex at all? Or did they do the hex, and then because they did the hex, they're living in this waking nightmare, I guess? And I guess that's what they're trying to do. Is because I remember a line of dialogue, oh, you complete it, but you're living in a waking nightmare in between reality, just at the point when you're about to die. And I'm just like, okay, whatever. But that doesn't explain Payson and how he keeps showing up with blood on his face. Like, he's not a ghost at this point. Did the hex give him powers to teleport, and you just put fake blood on his face every time? Like, I just don't understand. I don't get it. Why? How does Payson fit into any of this? And then on top of that, why doesn't he get the extra powers and the extra lives? Since he's the one that did the hex, why the heck does the old guy get anything? The guy didn't do shit, except he did the hex the first time around. And speaking of not doing shit, this film has the worst sex scene I have ever seen in an entire film. And it's not because it's featuring two people who are not the best to look at, aren't the most attractive. No, not that reason. It's not because they do, other stuff in the bedroom that is awkward or, not for my taste. No. It's because it is the worst sex scene ever in terms of the content, because nothing happens. You have a scene featuring Kayla Adams' character Sarah, and I think it might have been the Greg character. I think it was either Greg or Evan, but I'm thinking it was Greg. And so she gets with this Greg guy, and they start flirting with one another. They hit it off. Sarah and Greg, they start kissing. They take their shirts off. They jump into bed. And I kid you not, this is exactly how this scene is edited. As soon as they jump into bed, it just cuts to them like sitting in bed in like post-sex position. I'm half expecting Sarah to be like, "Oh, was it good for you?" You know? And I'm like, "Was it good for you? Like it wasn't good for anybody cuz nothing happened." They kissed, they took their shirts off, they jumped into bed, and then there's nothing that insinuates that they had any sex to begin with. I'm thinking that they just furiously cuddled for 30 seconds. I mean, this scene is so bad and so poorly edited. It's unbelievable. Like it's just kiss, shirt off, jump in bed, then it's over. Like you literally could blink and you would miss the sex scene. And I swear to God, there are guys who have premature ejaculation who last longer than the sex scene in this movie. But yeah, this script sucks, and it really stretches things out to the point of just sheer ludicrousness because of how much padding and how much it has to throw in there to make it so it's a feature length. There's, like I said, there's barely enough here of a plot for 10 to 15 minutes, let alone an hour and 20 something minutes. It doesn't help either that the ending is one of those bullshit endings where everyone dies and the people who did the curse, they drive off happily ever after, and you're like, okay, all right, that was pointless. The movie was already fairly pointless as it is, and with that ending, it makes it even more pointless. Give me Drop Zone. I'll take Drop Zone with Wesley Snipes. Hell, I'll take that fucking movie Cutaway with one of the Baldwin brothers over Hex. And the cast wasn't any better. I mean, other than Bryan Roberts, who I thought did a decent job as Wade, because he had some real charisma. Kayla Adams was atrocious as Sarah. She could skydive, but that's about it. She can't act. She's a wooden plank. Matthew Holcomb, the guy is just your typical douchebag jock. You half expect him to say bro after every line of dialogue. Eric Alperin is Evan, Brad Worch II is Greg, more Chloe Berman is Lisa, not the best. Schno Mozingo, I don't know what kind of, that's a crazy name, as Chris, the old guy with the beard and the mustache. I mean, not the mustache. He does have a beard, so technically he does have a mustache, but the ponytail, wannabe tough guy, the kind of guy who thinks he's a biker or acts like he's a biker, and I don't know if he actually is a biker in real life or not, but this is just the vibe I get from the guy, where he's the kind of guy who hangs out at biker bars and wears the biker gang jacket but isn't a part of the biker gang. A poser. That's the vibe I get from that guy. And unless there's not a whole lot to say about Rob Mars as Andy or Courtney Munch as Diane or anyone else in this cast. Other than Bryan Roberts, everyone else is just a misfire. To me, it's like they are the acting equivalent of somebody who jumps out of a plane without a parachute and just splats hard on the ground because they fail so hard. And there are other technical merits, I guess. Well, I don't even know if I want to say merits. There are technical elements, with the other people who are involved with the film, like the cinematographer Lloyd Bateman. But nothing about it is really that impressive looking. The editing by Chris Johnston and Andy Malchiodi. The editing in this is terrible. Like, there are a lot of times where it's just wonky. It's woefully bad. There's just a lot of stuff with this editing where you're just like, wow, this scene looks like it was edited in the back of the plane while they were dealing with a massive amount of turbulence. And the visual effects are laughable. This has some of the shittiest CGI fire I've seen in anything. I swear to God, Ugandan cinema with a budget of $85 has CGI that is on par with the CGI in this movie, and that's pathetic. That really is. And who killed Captain Alex and Bad Black have comparable CGI to your American production that 100%. I don't know what the full budget was for this movie, but I'm pretty damn sure it was more than $85. But yeah, just a bad movie. It really is. Um, it was just a dumb idea anyway to begin with, and it's just poorly executed. And oh yeah, the music. Oh, I guess I can mention the music. Yeah, the music is pretty bad too, especially the songs that they did for the film, because it was a cheap film, so they didn't have the money to do like covers of original or popular songs, or actually use the original versions of the songs. So what they did is they had these new songs that were created for the film, and they are just pure ear cringe. There's like a country song that's pretty bad. There's a love song that sucks. There's this song that plays in the beginning that reminds me of that awful song from Batwoman. Remember that? I'm a woman, or whatever that fucking song was. And this song here is it's just terrible, because it's a really bad girl boss theme that just makes you cringe so hard. And the score by Mike Wolpe is not much of anything either. So yeah, pretty bad film. Horrible movie. Definitely would not recommend. Even for a laugh, it's not even a good, like, so bad it's good experience. It's just bad. It's just a bad movie. Bad film with a dumb concept that might work with a better writer, but without that, it just flounders, and it just hits the tarmac. So yeah, that's my review of Hex, and as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.